For centuries, people living near Japan's Aokami Lake passed down a warning that outsiders rarely took seriously. Never look into the water after midnight. It was not because of dangerous currents of hidden rocks. The lake was perfectly still, too still. According to local legend, the surface became a mirror between worlds once the moon reached its highest point. Anyone who stared into the water long enough would eventually see someone standing behind them. The terrifying part was simple. When you turned around, no one would be there. But the next time you looked into the mirror, they would be one step closer. Most people dismiss this story as another ghost tale designed to frighten children. Naomi certainly did. A freelance photographer, she traveled across Japan documenting forgotten places and unusual folklore. Okami Lake seemed like the perfect location for a feature about rural legends. The nearest village consisted of only a handful of houses surrounded by dense pine forest. Almost everyone living there was over 70 years old. When Naomi asked about the lake, conversations ended immediately. An elderly shopkeeper quietly slid a small wooden charm across the counter. "You'll want this. I'm just taking photographs." So did everyone else. That answer stayed with her long after she left. Later that evening, Naomi checked into a small guest house overlooking the lake. The owner, Mr. Fujimoto, served tea before offering a single warning. "If you hear someone walking around your room tonight," she paused, "don't check the window." Naomi smiled politely. "You really believe these stories?" Mr. Fujimoto didn't answer. Instead, she closed every curtain in the house before sunset. Around 11:30 that night, Naomi packed her camera and tripod. The lake was breathtaking. Moonlight reflected across the perfectly calm surface without the slightest ripple. No insects buzzed, no frogs called. Even the wind seemed unwilling to disturb the silence. She positioned her camera and waited. Midnight arrived. Nothing happened. Relieved, Naomi laughed quietly. Then she noticed her reflection. It wasn't moving. She slowly raised one hand. Her reflection remained perfectly still. Her heartbeat quickened. A second later, the reflection smiled. Naomi had not. Frozen with fear, she watched as the reflected version of herself stepped backward across the water. Behind it stood a tall figure wrapped in long black robes. Its face was hidden beneath dark hair hanging almost to the ground. Without making a sound, it pointed directly behind Naomi. Remembering the legend, she refused to turn around. Instead, she squeezed her eyes shut. When she looked again, the lake appeared normal. Only her own reflection remained. Shaken, she hurried back to the guest house. That night's sleep never came. Shortly after 2 in the morning, footsteps circled outside her room, slow, measured, crunching softly across the gravel path. Once, twice, again. She remembered Mr. Fujimoto's warning and stayed in bed. The footsteps stopped outside her window. A gentle tapping followed. 3 knocks, then silence. Eventually, dawn arrived. Outside the gravel contained only one set of footprints. They ended directly beneath her window. There were no footprints leading away. The next morning, Naomi interviewed the oldest villager she could find, an elderly priest named Soji. Listened carefully before speaking. "The lake doesn't create ghosts. What does it create? It introduces you to what? To the version of yourself that never left." The explanation made no sense. Seeing her confusion, invited her inside the village shrine. Hidden beneath faded cloth coverings stood dozens of old mirrors. Everyone had been turned toward the wall. "People used to bring mirrors here," he explained. "They believed reflections could become confused." Naomi asked if anyone had ever disappeared. Saoji nodded. Not immediately. The answer unsettled her more than anything else. She decided to leave the village the following morning. That evening, while packing her bags, she glanced into the bathroom mirror. Someone stood behind her. the same black-robed figure from the lake. She spun around, the room was empty. His breathing became shallow. Slowly, she looked back at the mirror. The figure was gone. Instead, her own reflection stared back, smiling. Again, she wasn't smiling. Panicking, Naomi covered every mirror in the guest house with towels before locking herself inside her room. Just before sunrise, she heard whispering from beneath the door. No words, only voices speaking too softly to understand. The whispers continued until daylight. The next morning, she left the village without saying goodbye. Back in Tokyo, life slowly returned to normal. For several weeks, nothing unusual happened until she developed her photographs. Every image of Awakami Lake appeared blank, except one. The final exposure showed Naomi standing beside the water. The problem was the photograph had been taken from behind. She had traveled alone. Someone had been standing only a few meters away holding her camera. Unable to explain it, she locked the photographs inside a drawer. Days later, she noticed something strange while brushing her teeth. Her reflection blinked half a second later than she did. The delay lasted only an instant. The following day, a full second. Soon, the difference became impossible to ignore. Her reflection often continued moving after she had already stopped. Sometimes it looked away before she did. Sometimes it seemed to watch something standing just outside the mirror's frame. Desperate for answers, Naomi returned to Awakami Lake. The village was silent, every house stood abandoned, doors hung open, meals remained untouched on all tables. Dust covered everything, only the shrine remained intact. Inside, she found Soji waiting, as though he had known she would return. Yu looked into the lake. She nodded. And now it follows. Can you stop it? She stared toward the covered mirrors. No. Then why did people stay here? To make sure it never left. He slowly uncovered the largest mirror inside the shrine. At first, Naomi saw only herself. Then another version stepped forward inside the glass. It wore the same clothes, the same face, the same frightened expression, except its eyes were completely black. It raised one hand, not toward Naomi, toward someone standing behind her. She refused to turn around. Soji quietly whispered, "Whatever you hear, don't look." Immediately, a familiar voice echoed through the shrine, her mother's voice calling her name, then her younger brother, then friends. Each sounded terrified, each begged for help. The voices surrounded her from every direction. Finally, one voice remained, her own. "Turn around." Naomi shut her eyes tightly. Several moments passed. The voices stopped. When she opened them again, the shrine was empty. Soji had vanished. So had every mirror. Only a single wooden sign rested on the floor. It read, "Never let your reflection be the last thing you see before sleeping." Naomi returned home carrying only the warning. From then on, she made a habit to turn every mirror toward the wall before bed. Years passed, nothing happened, until one rainy evening after working late, she forgot. Half asleep, she caught a glimpse of herself in the bedroom mirror before closing her eyes. The next morning, everything in the apartment appeared perfectly normal, except every mirror reflected her room exactly as it had looked the night before. The reflections no longer matched reality. Each day they fell a little farther behind. A chair remained where she had already moved it. A light stayed on after she had switched it off. The door remained closed even though it stood open. Then one morning she noticed herself still sleeping in the reflection while she stood awake. The reflected Naomi slowly opened her eyes, smiled, and sat up. Outside the mirror, Naomi never moved. She was too busy watching the reflection walk toward the glass from the other side. Very gently, it placed one hand against the surface, waiting for the moment someone on this side reached back.